Once upon a time, Flat Kingdom was in peril from the deadly chaos of 3D. The 2D world found itself on the brink of unwanted transformation and chaos as 3D invaded and began to change the world from its wonderful sprightliness into something else. A powerful sorcerer finally saved the day by creating jewels that held the 3D transformations at bay. As long as the jewels were safe, so too was the Flat Kingdom. Of course, peace never lasts. Enter a thief who has begun to steal the jewels for some dastardly purpose, and, wouldn't you know it, he kidnapped the princess in the process. So now it's up to our diminutive hero, Flat, to stop the thief, reclaim the jewels, and save the princess. A large task for one so small, to be sure. Flat Kingdom Paper's Cut Edition is a 2D platformer that utilizes a combination of 2D sprites and 3D geometry to craft its world. It's more of a traditional 2D platformer than, say, Paper Mario, with some light Metroidvania elements and a bit of item hunting thrown in. Where Flat Kingdom distinguishes itself is in its novel approach to the gameplay, which utilizes a shape-changing rock-paper-scissors mechanic. Flat can transform into either a square, triangle, or circle, each with a unique set of abilities and special properties. In circle form, Flat can double jump and glide. As a square, Flat becomes heavy enough to sink to the bottom of lakes or oceans and can push some heavy objects. Finally, as a triangle, Flat can dash and jump further. As is common in the genre, progression through the campaign nets you new abilities to help you effectively navigate the environment and defeat enemies as you progress. The combat also utilizes the rock-paper-scissors mechanic, as each form is weak against another form. Triangle can pop circle, square can beat triangle, and circle beats square. Combat is, in theory, incredibly simple, but the challenge comes in recognizing which of the game's enemies are weak against what form, as, outside of the opening hours, enemy shapes become more visually complicated as you progress. The boss fights fall into a similar rhythm, requiring that you first recognize patterns and survive a barrage of attacks, before a key weakness can be exploited. Repeat until dead. The boss fights, like the combat, start off easy enough, but get notably tougher as you go along. The game's platforming feels very traditional most of the time, when you're not required to use one of Flat's shape abilities to overcome obstacles, such as throwing yourself like a shuriken at specific contacts when you're in triangle form. You'll be double jumping, block pushing, and switch activating your way across the game world. Level design starts simple enough, as you get used to swapping forms on the fly, before they expand in size, scope, and complexity. Early on, I spotted paths I couldn't get to without the right ability, and, sure enough, just before the final level, you're required to backtrack and find a way to open up the path to said level, with those new abilities that now let you reach previously inaccessible areas. As the story progresses, you'll also begin to spot changes around you, as 2D shapes start popping into 3D, adding a sense of layered depth to each stage. At first, it might just be the background objects, but soon platforms and huge parts of the landscape become 3D, leaving only Flat, the enemies, and the backdrop as sprites. For chronic hoarders, you'll find the world is also full of coins that you can use to buy yourself extra life hearts, lore in the form of scrolls to discover, and occasionally an item to pick up that you can deliver to an NPC in the world for an extra heart. Flat Kingdom's 2D art style is rather charming, with some wonderful animations for Flat himself. I particularly enjoyed the Roadrunner-style animation used for Flat's legs, when dashing as a triangle. The 2D sprites, however, I feel fare much better than the game's 3D elements, which are much simpler, both in geometric complexity and texture detail. It stands out in an otherwise attractive-looking world. All things considered, Flat Kingdom Paper's Cut Edition doesn't try and change the platforming genre in any way. What it does do, well, is provide a charming, breezy adventure that's perfect for those lazy Sunday pick-up-and-play sessions. It's also the perfect type of game that you could use to introduce the youngins or new players to the hobby and the genre.